Hey YouTube, it's Taki with TaqiTech. Welcome to episode 10 of the complex timesheet series. I already can't talk. Breaking DateDiff part 2, enter the array. So we have a lot of fun stuff to get into today on our way to the VB editor. There hasn't been a whole lot of changes to the main portion of the new main. Man, I can't ever talk when I record these videos. The new main subroutine that we created here to run this project. Let's see here. And I wanted to see if we still have that breaks. Well, we hard-coded it last time. Did I delete that? No, here it is. Okay, that's weird. So what happens when you're working on a module that has a lot of code that we don't even really need? Okay, actually I'm just going to put a stop right here so I could always find it. So this is kind of our way of skipping some parts of the main method and just kind of running it. When we take a look and we go back to the breaks module, and this is where we left off last time, and as you can see I got it all up and running. I have added to the original subroutine called load new breaks. We still have the same integer that was initialized to 6. All this part is the same. We're still adding to the row count each time. So through our iteration, we're adding to that row count. And as you can see, there's 2 more lines of code here. This one is split up by the undercase and continued on this next line. And then we can kind of see how we're putting information into that array. So up here we have an array. And what is an array? So an array is basically, programming languages give us the ability to kind of make groups or collections. And we're not going to talk about groups or collections here, but arrays may be the most primitive of those groups or collections. And the best way I can explain an array is to show you or to give you a visualization. So if we just go here, I'm just going to step into model 3 just for the point. Well, you know what, maybe we'll just stick with our spreadsheet here. So let's say I made an array of break times, and I wanted these 2 values to be in the array. So basically I would have the same variable with the same name, and I would be able to say this is in row 0, this is in row 1. So basically that's what, when we dim the array up here, and the way we do that is we put the little parentheses after the name of the array. So here you see task row. So at this point, when I wrote this code, I wanted a lot of integers called task rows, and the way I was going to differentiate between those integers is I would have a 0 or a 1 in here, and that will tell me which one I'm referring to. For example, here I'm going to have a lot of time periods, so I'll have maybe a 10 a.m. in one and a 1 a.m. in the other one. So time period 0 will be 10 a.m. Time period 1 will be 1 p.m. The thing with arrays is that they start with 0. They don't start with 1. So when you see it, let's say there's a lot to talk about with arrays actually. Let's say I made an array called dim test array, and I wanted 10 elements in that array. And actually, when I wrote this here, by writing this as string, I'm going to break this down for you guys. I'm going to try my best to at least. This actually here will give us 11 elements. So if I did this, I get 10 because I always have 0. Unless, okay. And then I'm also saying that, so basically I would have 10 strings here. And if I don't tell it what data type it is, you'll get a variant. A variant means it could be anything. It could be an integer, it could be a string, it could be a boolean, it could be a date, it could be a double, meaning that it's it's got a decimal point. It could be a float, meaning that it's a really large, high decimal point number, or it could be a large, meaning that it's really a large number. But a variant can be all those things, and some people might ask, well, why do we even say what type of variable an array is? Why don't we just leave them as a variant, since it will be able to handle all that? Well, it's more or less a memory thing. It's really not efficient to do that, especially if you know you're going to be dealing with only strings, or you know you're only going to be dealing with integers, or you know you're only going to be dealing with percentages or doubles or decimal points. Then you know what type of data you have. So it's better to call it what you want it. The other thing with an array, and this is basically when you start dealing with data sets and data groups and lists. List is another good name for an array. This is really when you're going to start needing to work with arrays, because arrays allow you to be multidimensional. Now that means you could have 3 dimensions to an array, which you rarely will see. You'll rarely see this, because this is the equivalent of saying that I need 9 rows and I forgot what was the second number. So I need 9 rows and 3 columns. So you need this much data here. So let's give it 9 rows, 3 columns. So you need this much data, and then that very third dimension here is on 9 worksheets. Well, or if you're talking about a database, 9 tables. But rarely you're going to use that unless you really want to throw a whole database into one variable, which you could do. You will see what you will see used a lot is a multi-dimensional array, and basically what this is basically saying 9 rows, 3 columns. So for example, if I wanted to save this whole thing here, so how many rows is this? 2, 4, 5 rows, 3 columns, and I could put up like a header here called break name, and I could actually probably do 6 rows and 3 columns, and I could put this whole table here into an array, or that whole data set if you want to be more specific. So, and I could call it break table. And then what did I say again? So let's take a look. Probably going to get an error here. So we got 6 rows, 3 columns. So 6 and 3. So I would be able to load that whole data set into this break table, and let's say I wanted to know what was in so B7 on this chart, but for the sake of the data set, it would be column 2, row 3. So 3-2. What's in 3-2? And it will give me 1 AM, and I could iterate through each one of these, and I could get the information for each one of these. Some say, and it's been proven, I've seen the tests that have been run, the speed tests, some say that you could get the data a little bit faster. So that's pretty much what I want to say about arrays at this point. There's a lot of information out there on the internet. There's a lot of classes out there that you could take. I have taken, and I'm aware of one special class on Udemy that talks about arrays. This specifies, it only talks about arrays. It's a really good class. If you're interested in that class, let me know in the comments, and I'll notate in the comments which class, where you can go to find it, and everything else. But let's get back to business here. Let me get rid of this, because this has nothing to do with the project here. Okay. So here we go. I dim it up, I dimension it up here, time periods. It's empty. I don't say how many records or how many rows I'm going to need here. If you leave it empty, then that means it's going to be a dynamic array, which means that you're going to have to redim it at some point. So as you see here in this line of code here, I say redim preserve. So redim means that I'm going to set this time periods to a number, and then preserve means I want to save all the information that is already in there. So what I say here is redim preserve time periods row count minus 6. So because I started with row count equal to 6, when I say 6 minus 6, I'm going to get a 0. When I'm on row count 7, when I subtract 6 from that, I'm going to get a 1, so on and so forth. So that will give me which row I'm in the array. Not necessarily what row I'm in on the spreadsheet, but which row, which column I'm going to keep in the array. And then we actually initialize that array at the right here. Now it doesn't look like it says time period 0 or time periods 1 or time periods 2. Those are the 3 rows that we're going to be dealing with this time around. But that's exactly what this is saying right here. And then we call our new function called add time, and we pass into add time the row count. So then going down, dropping down here to our new function add time, we pass in the row count. As you can see here, I have 5 lines of code. We have 1 integer that's only used within the function. It's a function, so that means it's going to be returning a value. The variable is an integer. It's called temp time. Basically, that's going to hold the number of minutes that are between one set point in time and the next. So what I did here is I said if row count equals 6, then I want to look at the data in row 1, 2, which would be, so row 1, column 2, 6 a.m. And I also want to look at the time between 6 a.m. and what's in row count, which would be 6, 2. And that would be our 10 a.m. So I want to know, basically I want it to tell me that there's going to be 240 minutes there. Okay? And if you go back and you look at, let me see, I believe I think I wrote it on this model here. So I got the 240 here, and then a 240 here, and then a 30 minutes. And I kind of deviated from this because I realized that even though it would, because I'm not working on printing it yet, it would work for printing, but then I would have to break it when it got time to go into this model here. So I said, let me just code it correctly for both models right off the bat. Okay, so we're going to call that function called getTimePeriod that we talked about in the last episode, and that is in the calculate subroutine. I'm sorry, calculate module. And here's getTimePeriod here. I'm going to try to separate it out here so that you guys might be able to see it a little clearer. Back to DateDiff, asking only for the minutes. So we say we're looking at 6 a.m., the cell that holds 6 a.m., the cell that holds 10 a.m. First time around. Going back to the breaks module, add new time, we return that, we're out of that if statement. In the function, come up here, we're going to add one more to row count. We're going to evaluate again, is it 11? Nope. Is it equal to nothing the next break time? Wait, that's the model. Here's the, and this one says no, 1 p.m. So then we go through it again. This time when we drop down here, we row count doesn't equal 6. Every other time we're going to go through here, where I'm just going to say row count equals, now I'm going to be looking at 6-2, because now it's 7. When I pass down row count here, it's now 7. 7-2, and I'm going to look at, I'm sorry, 6-2 here and 7-2 here. So I'm looking at the difference between these two times. Okay? And that, the difference between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. is 3 hours, which would be 180 minutes. If we go back and look at our model, let's look at the right model here. I have 2.5 hours. Oh, that's because we had to subtract the break. Hold on, let's go back and look. Yep, see right here, I forgot something. So we get the time back, and then we're going to subtract the 30 minutes from it, and we just do that by row count minus 1, looking up at that value in C6. Okay, so then we're going to get back our get time period will give us back 180. Then we're going to subtract 30 from it. We're going to have 150. We're going to go again. It's going to say there's nothing more in row count, which count I believe would be 9. No, it's 8. Sorry, 8B, and there's nothing in 8B here, so then it's going to drop down here. The loop is going to be done. I'm going to redim preserve one more time. Row count -6. So now this is the final record too. So we got 3 records. We got 240, 150. Now we should be looking at our last record, which will be the time between 1 p.m. and 2:30 p.m. minus the 12. And so we drop down there, and let's see here. So 1 p.m. to 2:30 would be 1.5 hours, which would be 90 minutes, and then we're going to subtract 12 from it, so then we'll have 78, and that's what we should get when we go through there again on our very last. And this will always be here at the bottom because it's going to be the very last calculation that we do after we're done with our breaks. So let's run it. Let's hope it works. I'm gonna I've spoiled it. I already tested it, but then again, as you guys know, anything can happen when I start running projects. So unless I've run it like 10 times in a row, there's always some I'm always a little skeptical. All right, let's go. Load breaks. Here we go. Oh, let's bring up the watch. You know what? I'm just gonna put my cursor in there, and I'm gonna hit watch. Add to watch. Okay. Time period is not gonna work. Let's see here if I can get the whole thing. Add watch. Time periods should work. We already had one, so I could actually. Let me get rid of this. Delete watch. Okay. All right, here we go. So now we've dimmed our time period. If you look down here, you can see it's 0. Row count is only equal to 6. So we're going to add the new time. We're going over to our calculate. And we should have 240. Yep, 240. So, and then we're going to add to the increment to that row count. I'm going to loop through that. We're going to go through again. So now row count should be 7. This should be 1 because we're subtracting 6 from it. Did I hit right? Okay. Now we should have, we got our 240 right here. And this should bring us the next number. So that is 180. And we subtracted 30 from it. So we got the 150. So if you see down here, you see 240 and 150. Let's do it one more time. No, let's just add that last. Now we're going to take a look at the difference between, so between one, what is it? What time is it? So between 1 and 2:30. So we got 1.5 hours. But we're going to subtract that 12 from it. So 1.5 equals 90. Come back up here, and you can see right here I put it so that the line isn't so long, so I put an underscore there. Minus C minus row count minus 1. Row count is currently 8. It's going to bring us to 7. So C and 7, that's going to give us 12. And that should give us our last value of 78. So now we have all the break periods into one array. So in the next episode here, we're gonna actually start printing out these times. We're gonna get our models. We're gonna get the time schedule to look like our models here. And we bring them up. So we're gonna do this model here. I'm going to do this model here in the next episode. So I really appreciate you watching. Hopefully it wasn't too confusing for you. Hopefully you got something out of my explanation of arrays. And if you do like these videos, make sure you give them a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you like the content on this channel. And until next time, take it easy.